Hello, my pottery posse. How are you today? I hope you're doing great because every day is a great day to play with some sewing materials. If you guys remember from one of my previous videos, I got a whole bunch of sewing things for Christmas and I'm a little too excited to use them. So excited. It's going to be an outfit. I found some material at Walmart on clearance. I think it was like maybe $3 for 3 yards. So we are going to be making a wrap shirt, not a rapture, a wrap shirt. The rapture comes later. It's probably going to be a 2-part because making 2 things is a lot and I've never done a wrap shirt, and this is like the first time I am ever doing anything with stretch material. So we're just going to see how this goes. Yeah, I guess without further ado, let's get into it. All right, let's go ahead and get this morning started by opening the curtains, letting some light in here, and then we need to go and grab our broom and dustpan because, come on people, sweeping your area is vitally important so your bum doesn't get dirty when you sit on the floor. And always put things back because, hello, clean house, happy house. Then you need to go into your closet and find some pieces of clothing that you really like that you're going to replicate. We're going to be making a pattern from the parchment paper that you have in your kitchen that you never use for anything except for sewing.
Then you need to grab your patterns and pens and pencils and scissors.
And then finally, a well-abled body, which is me. Now you need to go ahead and lay things out as flat as they possibly can be because we're going to use that parchment paper to make our pattern. So what you need to do is flatten, 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 and then pin it in place. And you're going to do that with everything that you need. I need one side of the wrap because, you know, with 2 sides, it's the same thing. It's just the opposite side. Anyways, and then I'm making a half back piece because my parchment paper is just not big enough. So anyways, I'm just going to have to fold the fabric in half and then, you know, cut it out that way. Since I'm making a maybe long sleeve, maybe 3/4 sleeve, I don't know. Anyways, I just realized that I put the sleeve on the paper the wrong way because I folded it in half and the folded part of the fabric of the sleeve has to be on the fold because if not, you just have 2 weird pieces of an arm and you need the whole arm, you know, when it folds out flat. Anyways, I'm gonna have to do this even though I'm really frustrated and I don't really want to redo this, but I'm going to. Anyways, let's go ahead and get on to tracing. So I'm tracing everything along the outside, but also along the seam. So I'm turning this around and then feeling where the seam is and then tracing it with my pencil. Also, I suggest making the front and back pieces longer than you want them to be. It can always be cut shorter and smaller later. So I have to have seam allowance, but also wiggle room. So, you know, 1 inch, maybe 2. Once you're finished, take out the pins and cut down your pattern pieces. How satisfying. Like I said, we need to cut out our pattern pieces, but the crisscross part of the wrap shirt, I'm not quite sure how far down I want this to go. I'm a very modest person, so this is going to have to be pretty high up or I'm just going to have to be wearing an undershirt with this. But I am going to leave this uncut until I've finished my mock-up so I at least semi know what I'm doing. Why did I do that? So remember when I said leave the pattern pieces long? I accidentally cut it shorter because I wasn't thinking. Oh well, I guess. So now I need to go make a mock-up using the pattern pieces and some fabric that I don't care about messing up, but has a similar feel to the real fabric that I'm using. I made this one from an old hand-me-down dress which didn't have sleeves. And for the first time making sleeves, I would say I did a pretty ding-dang good job. As you can see, this turned out kind of short and extra revealing because I did not have enough fabric to work with, so it's not exactly how I want it to look, but I think I did a pretty good job with making sure that the sleeves are cut out correctly. Now, I don't have a serger, which one day I would like to have, but for now, I'm just using zigzag and straight stitches along with pinking shears or zigzag scissors to make sure that the fabric won't fray or come apart easily. I also hemmed the whole thing by turning the edges under twice and sewing them down. And to make do with what I had, I ended up having to cut out extra straight pieces to sew onto the ends of the front piece to make the wraparound straps. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this for the final piece, but I do have a possible solution where the front is one long piece that wraps all the way around. It's hard to explain now, but you'll see in a sec. But first, look at that armpit work. Crispy! Looks totes profesh. Anywho, we need to get to the real deal. Now, unfortunately, I did not feel myself making the mock-up or pinning things together or even cutting anything out because I wasn't thinking about it and I wanted to just go for it. Now on to the skirt. Here is the formula for making a circle skirt, and it's pretty simple if you let it be, but again, I already cut it out, and that is the first thing that I cut out from the fabric, and then I used the leftovers to make the shirt, which is actually what sparked this video in the first place. But basically, this whole thing should just be a big old circle, and I've already folded it in quarters so that there's 4 layers of fabric, and I need to cut out my waist. So I'm just going to measure everything out and then cut. Just be sure that you make this smaller than you think you need to, because you can always make it bigger, but you can't make it smaller. So yeah, I've made that mistake before. Then I had to pleat everything and I didn't like it. So anyways, this whole thing should basically just be a giant circle with a little circle cut out of the middle. And this is what it looks like when you open it up. A giant flat donut. Cool. Okay, so before we get sewing, I need to double check my shirt pieces and pin anything together that we can go ahead and sew before we have to do some hard thinking about our next steps. And this, my friends, is what I was telling you about earlier with the whole possible solution thing. Since I was able to go ahead and cut this on the fold, the top piece is actually one long piece that can wrap all the way around me, and I can sew in the back piece. It works! Totally works. Cool. Wow. So I'm going to quickly pin all this in place, which is a puzzle in and of itself. And I think I'm done. Now let's get to sewing. And here, my friends, comes the issues. My machine was not wanting to cooperate with this fabric. It was doing this weird skip stitch thing. I tried everything to fix it, from rethreading everything, top and bottom, to disassembling parts and dusting it, to checking the tension, to changing the stitch length and pattern, to calling my mom and my mom-in-law, and finally I took it to the shop because I was tired of trying different things, and they told me it was my thread. It was my thread. So if you are having this issue or issues like this, first off, don't use 50-plus-year-old thread, but also just try changing your thread or redoing your bobbin, because if the bobbin is wound too tight or too loose, it can mimic this issue. Now that my machine wants to sew, let's get all these pinned fabrics sewed down. And let's hem it while we're at it. Ah, much better. Something you may or may not know is that when you're sewing, you should do a lock stitch, or I think that's what it's called. Basically, you go forwards a couple stitches and then back and forth several times, and it locks your thread. So essentially, you have a knot there, and your clothes won't come unraveled, because that would be really bad. And now that I've sewn all of that, let's straighten out the top and see if I put it together the right way. I did it right. Woo! Now I'm going to show you how to hem something by turning under the edges twice. Now you can go through and do this the correct way by measuring and folding and then ironing it, but I'm lazy and impatient, so I'm just gonna do it as I sew. Also, since this is a circle skirt, it's going to take me forever anyways. And also, if you want to be super proper and you're using a looser knit fabric or other type of fabric that relaxes over time, you'll want to hang it on a mannequin for several days and then recut the hemline so it's all even. This fabric shouldn't relax, so I think I'm good. Well, hopefully I am anyways. Now I've gone all the way around, but because of the circular and stretchy nature of my fabric, there's some awkward bunching that wouldn't have happened if I just ironed and measured in the first place, so I'm going to sew this down a second time so it's nice and flat. You see that difference? Good. Okay, so while Emily is working on that, I'm going to work on using the last little bit of scraps to make a waistband for my skirt.
And yes, this is the last little bit of fabric that I have left, except for the circle from the middle of the skirt, which I used as a tester piece for when my machine was not wanting to work. Now, what we want to do in order to make a nice, neat, purposeful waistband is have 2 layers, which I have here. So, 4 pieces put together, but preferably it would be one much wider piece that's all one, so there's only 1 seam instead of 2 or more. But I'm working with what I have, so I'm going to measure the smallest part to get the width, and it looks like I'm going to be able to work with about 4 millimeters here. So I will measure that all the way down the fabric, marking it with pins where the line is, and I had to redo this about 500 bajillion times, so don't worry if you kind of have to mess around with it too much. You'll get there eventually. Now, sewing this in place is not too easy on the brain, but I'll walk you through it as best I can.
First, I need to go through and iron down all my pieces. Seeing as I'm working with the salvage edge here, it's rolling up quite a bit. And since it's polyester, I'm using a pressing cloth, which is just cotton fabric, to protect this fabric. Now I'm going to sew the 2 matching pieces together, right sides together, so that when I turn it back right side out, the seam is hidden. I had a bit of a hard time sewing along the very edge of the fabric, and I had to use this tool called the purple thing to help me keep it straight. This happens to me constantly, so please tell me if you know why this continually happens to me, like all the flipping time, and my fabric is just stuck. Okay, now that mess is done, I need to iron this flat, making sure that the front side is slightly higher than the back side so that the seam lies on the inside of the band instead of on top or on the outside. All done. I'm just kidding, but I did go ahead and sew down the sides. Sewing the sides together wasn't too bad, but it seemed like every time I was filming myself sewing throughout this whole project, something was happening to my machine and either it would mess up or I would. So I didn't film myself doing a few steps, but basically I sewed everything together so that it was one long strip of fabric with all the seams towards the inside of the fabric. Then, when I pinned the waistband to the skirt, I realized that I did the thing where I cut out the center of my circle skirt too big. So I had to sew a little triangle on the sides of the skirt to cinch it in a tad. And now I'm sewing the band to the skirt in a way that the right sides are together and the band is sitting on the outside of the skirt. Also, happy Valentine's Day, guys. I did my nails. They're super cute. Struggle bus, struggle bus. Struggle bus, struggle bus, struggle bus, struggle bus. Y'all, I was riding the struggle bus all the way to Struggle Town on this one. Dang it. See, every time. So when I initially sewed this down in place, the fabric kept moving and I wanted to be able to change the tension of my foot and the little teeth underneath, but this sewing machine doesn't give me that option, or I just don't know what I'm talking about. But I went through a second time around so that when you turn this right sides out, it's a nice straight stitch all the way across. Hardy crump. Now that is done, we need to iron the seam to where it is now creased correctly, and then we need to turn under the inseam and sew that down. Now when I went to sew this last seam, The fabric kept moving again, but this time it was way worse. By the end of it, my waistband wouldn't be a tube, it would be a strip. So I decided to take out all of the stitches I just did and watch a couple movies and hand sew this down with an invisible stitch so that it would look a little bit more professional-ish, more finished. Now you can go to the iron once more and press everything down nice and flat, but I didn't think y'all needed to see another shot of me ironing, so here we are. And just like that, sort of, we have a finished skirt. I tried to just put the skirt over the original dress that I made the wrap shirt pattern from, but it was a tad too long under there, but it would have been really cute. Anyways, here it is, friends. So cute, so swooshy, and I love it. I did make myself a little dizzy though. I know this is a very different video from what I normally do, but I've always wanted to make my own clothes and I wanted to be able to share this experience with you. If it is your first time visiting my channel and you're curious about what I normally do, I'm a potter and I love making entertaining tutorials and fun videos as well. Make sure that you come back next week for an episode of Honey Pottery, and then the following week for the rest of the wrap shirt make. I guess that is it for today's video. I will see y'all in the next one, but until then, stay creative, my friends. Love ya. Bye.